Please like this video and listen to my story till the end. And let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. We need to discuss your inappropriate behavior with visitors yesterday, my HR manager said, as I sat down in her office. Her tone was sharp, her eyes cold. I blinked, completely confused. What inappropriate behavior? I was just being helpful. My heart raced as I tried to piece together what she was talking about. That's when it hit me. Someone had been watching everything I did. Hi, I'm Mia. I'm 22, and I work as a receptionist at Carter & Blake Associates, one of the most prestigious corporate law firms in the city. It's my first real job since graduating with a communications degree, and honestly, I need it. I'm drowning in student loans, and this paycheck is the only thing keeping me afloat. I grew up in a small, working-class family. My parents worked tirelessly, juggling multiple jobs just to make ends meet. When my younger brother, Danny, was born deaf, our family's world shifted. We all learned sign language together, and it became second nature to me, like breathing. Through high school and college, I kept studying ASL. It wasn't just a skill, it was a connection to a community most people overlook. Working at this law firm was intimidating at first. Everyone strutted around in tailored suits, talking about million-dollar cases like it was just another Tuesday. I didn't have the polish or the connections, but I had something else, a genuine desire to help people, even if they couldn't hear me speak. The day before my HR meeting, I was at the reception desk around 3 p.m. when an elderly man walked through the glass doors. He looked lost, his eyes darting around the busy lobby. He was probably in his 70s, dressed in a sharp navy suit, but his face was etched with confusion. I watched as he approached the security desk. The guard barely glanced up from his computer, lazily pointing toward the elevators. The man tried to ask something, but the guard was already ignoring him. My chest tightened. Then he moved toward two of my coworkers, Janet and Steve, who were chatting by the coffee station. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying that distinct tone I immediately recognized. He was deaf. "I'm looking for Mr. Peterson's office." Janet and Steve just stared at him. Janet waved her hands awkwardly and said, "I don't understand what you're saying," in a loud, exaggerated voice. Steve rolled his eyes and walked away. I couldn't just sit there. I got up from my desk and walked over to him. "Hello, can I help you find someone?" I signed. His face lit up with relief. "Yes, thank you so much," he signed back. "I have an appointment with Attorney Peterson, but I'm not sure which floor." "Third floor, suite 315, I signed. "I can call up and let them know you're here." "That would be wonderful." "My name is Robertson," he signed. We chatted briefly while I called upstairs. He told me he was a lawyer visiting from Portland for a consultation. I explained that my brother was deaf, and that's how I learned to sign. He smiled warmly, his gratitude palpable. "It's so rare to find people who understand," he signed. "Thank you for making me feel welcome here." As he headed to the elevator, I returned to my desk, feeling a quiet sense of pride. I didn't notice that someone had been watching the entire interaction. The next morning, my phone buzzed. "Please report to HR immediately." My stomach dropped. What could I have possibly done wrong? Stay tuned for part 2, where things take an unexpected turn. I walked into the HR office, my palms clammy and my heart pounding like a drum. Miss Rodriguez, the HR manager, sat behind her desk, her expression unreadable. "There have been multiple complaints about your behavior yesterday," she said, her voice clipped. "Complaints?" My mind raced. What could I have done? "I'm sorry, but I don't understand," I said, my voice trembling. "Several employees reported that you were making inappropriate hand gestures and drawing unnecessary attention to yourself with a visitor," she explained, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. I stared at her, stunned. I was helping someone who needed assistance. He was deaf, and I was using sign language. "That's exactly the issue," she said, her eyes narrowing. "You stepped outside your role as a receptionist." Her words hit me like a slap. My coworkers had reported me for being kind. I left the HR office in a daze, my mind spinning. How could helping someone be seen as inappropriate? But the nightmare was just beginning. Word spread through the office like wildfire. By lunchtime, everyone seemed to know I'd been written up. The whispers started first, then the stares. That afternoon, as I was organizing files at my desk, Janet and Steve walked by with two other coworkers from accounting. "Did you see Mia's little performance yesterday?" Janet said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Steve snickered, acting like she's some kind of interpreter or something. So over the top. One of the accountants laughed. "Maybe she thinks she's too good to just answer phones like the rest of us." My cheeks burned, but I kept my head down, pretending I couldn't hear them. The humiliation was unbearable, but I refused to let them see me break. 3 days later, during our weekly team meeting, the tension reached a boiling point. Patricia Williams, our office manager, stood at the front of the room, going over general policies. Then, out of nowhere, she looked directly at me. "I want to remind everyone that we have specific roles here for a reason," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Receptionists handle phones and visitors. We don't need anyone stepping outside their job description to play translator or social worker." The room went silent. All eyes turned to me. I felt like I was shrinking into my chair, my face hot with shame. After the meeting, I approached Patricia privately. "Miss Williams, I was just trying to help someone who is struggling to communicate," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "That's not your job, Mia," she said coldly. "Your job is to sit at that desk and answer phones. Nothing more." Her words echoed in my mind for the rest of the day. I felt small, insignificant, like my kindness had been twisted into something shameful. Have you ever been criticized for doing the right thing? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like this video if you believe kindness should never be punished. But this was only the beginning. Stay tuned for part 3, where the hostility escalates, and I begin to question everything. The days that followed were a blur of whispers, side eyes, and cruel remarks. The office had turned into a battlefield, and I was the target. Every interaction felt like a test, every glance a judgment. The first escalation came just a week after the HR meeting. I was helping a client find the conference room when Mr. Blake, one of the senior partners, walked by with 2 other lawyers. He stopped right in front of me, his voice loud enough to echo through the lobby. "Miss Rivera, isn't it?" he said, his tone dripping with mockery. "It's Mia, sir," I corrected softly, my stomach twisting. "I heard about your little sign language show last week," he said, smirking. "We hired a receptionist, not a translator. If our clients need special accommodations, they can arrange for professional services. We can't have employees freelancing as interpreters." The 2 lawyers with him chuckled. One of them added, "What's next? Offering yoga classes in the lobby?" They walked away laughing, leaving me standing there, humiliated and frozen. My hands trembled as I returned to my desk, my mind racing with a mix of anger and despair. But it didn't stop there. The workplace became a minefield of passive-aggressive comments and outright hostility. People would walk past my desk, making exaggerated hand gestures, mocking the very thing I had done to help someone. One morning, I found a note taped to my computer. In bold, messy handwriting, it read, "Save the dramatic performances for your auditions." My throat tightened as I crumpled the paper, fighting back tears. Even the security guard, who used to greet me with a smile, started treating me differently. His once friendly nods were replaced with cold, dismissive glances. I started doubting myself. Maybe I had overstepped. Maybe I should have just stayed at my desk and let someone else handle the situation. But every time I thought about Mr. Chen's grateful smile, I knew I had done the right thing. The second escalation came during another team meeting. Patricia, the office manager, was in rare form that day. She stood at the front of the room, her voice sharp and commanding. "We need to maintain a professional image," she said, her eyes locking onto mine. "Our clients expect a certain standard of service, not amateur dramatics." The room went silent again, the tension so thick it was suffocating. I felt every pair of eyes on me, their judgment heavy and unrelenting. After the meeting, I overheard Janet talking to a group of coworkers. "I heard Patricia is finally going to get rid of the drama queen at the front desk," she said smugly. "About time we got someone professional." Her words cut deep, but I refused to let them see me break. I kept my head high, even as the weight of their cruelty threatened to crush me. Have you ever felt like the world was against you for simply doing the right thing? Share your story in the comments. And if you believe kindness is a strength, hit that like button. But just when I thought things couldn't get worse, something unexpected happened. Stay tuned for part 4, where the truth begins to unravel and a surprising ally steps forward. The tension in the office was unbearable. Every day felt like walking a tightrope, knowing one wrong move could send me plummeting. But then, something strange started happening. Mr. Morrison, our CEO, began appearing in the lobby more often. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. Maybe he had more meetings or was checking on operations. But then I noticed the way he watched me. He'd stand by the elevators or pretend to check his phone, his eyes following my every move. Was he looking for reasons to fire me? My stomach churned every time I caught him glancing my way. Around the same time, I started receiving mysterious emails from someone in the executive office. They weren't signed, but they asked specific questions about my background. How long have you been fluent in ASL? One email asked. Have you ever worked with deaf advocacy organizations? Another inquired. I didn't respond. It felt like a trap, another way to corner me. But the emails kept coming, and they seemed curious, almost genuine. Then, one afternoon, I overheard Patricia on the phone in the break room. Her voice was low, but her words were unmistakable. We need someone more appropriate for the professional image we want to project, she said. My blood ran cold.
She was talking about replacing me.
But the strangest thing of all was Mr. Chen. He kept coming back. Every few days, he'd appear in the lobby, asking for help with something different. And every time he specifically asked for me. You're the only one here who treats me like a person, he signed during one visit. His words hit me like a wave, a mix of gratitude and sadness. On his 4th visit, everything changed. He approached my desk with a serious expression, his hands moving deliberately as he signed. I need to tell you who I really am. I blinked, confused. What do you mean? I signed back. My name is Robert Chen, he signed. I'm not just any lawyer. I'm the founder of the Pacific Northwest Deaf Rights Foundation. I've been evaluating this firm for a potential partnership. My jaw dropped. You've been testing us? Not testing, he signed, his expression softening. Observing. He explained that his foundation was considering a major contract with a firm to represent deaf clients in discrimination cases. The partnership would be worth millions over 3 years. I stared at him, stunned. This wasn't just some random visitor. This was one of the most respected deaf rights attorneys on the West Coast. Your kindness and communication skills are exactly what we're looking for in a partner firm, he signed. But your coworker's behavior has been very concerning. His words were a lifeline, a validation of everything I had been doubting about myself. But they also carried a weight I wasn't sure I was ready for. What would you do if you found out someone had been secretly observing you? Tell me in the comments. And if you've ever felt like your kindness was being tested, hit that like button. But the story doesn't end here. Stay tuned for part 5, where everything comes to a head and the truth changes everything. The days after Mr. Chen's revelation felt surreal. I couldn't stop replaying his words in my mind. Your kindness saved this firm. It was a validation I desperately needed, but it also left me wondering, what would happen next? Then, on a Friday afternoon, exactly 1 month after the original incident, I received an email that made my heart skip a beat. Please report to Mr. Morrison's office immediately. My hands shook as I knocked on the door. Come in, Mia, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his massive desk. His voice was calm, but his expression was unreadable. I sat down, my heart pounding so loudly, I was sure he could hear it. Do you know why you're here? He asked. I assume it's about the complaints, I said quietly, bracing myself for the worst. Yes, he said, opening a thick folder on his desk. Let's talk about those complaints. He flipped through the pages, his eyes scanning the documents. I have documentation of everything that's happened over the past month. Every comment, every meeting, every conversation. My stomach dropped. This was worse than I thought. I witnessed your interaction with Mr. Chun on that first day, he continued, his voice steady. I was standing by the elevators and saw everything. Your professionalism, your kindness, your ability to communicate with someone who needed help. I blinked, confused. This wasn't going where I expected. I also witnessed your colleagues' behavior, he said, his tone hardening. Their dismissive attitudes, their complete lack of basic human decency. It was unacceptable. He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine. Mr. Chun isn't just any lawyer, Mia. He's been evaluating our firm for a potential partnership worth $4.2 million over 3 years. We've been competing with 5 other firms for this contract. I couldn't speak. I just stared at him, my mind racing. Your colleagues' treatment of him and their subsequent harassment of you almost cost us this opportunity, he said, his voice sharp. But your kindness, your language skills, and your genuine care for people saved it. He slid a piece of paper across the desk. Mr. Chin specifically requested that you be our primary liaison for deaf clients. He said you're the only employee here who treated him with dignity and respect. Tears welled up in my eyes. I don't understand, I whispered. I'm offering you a promotion, he said, his voice softening. Client relations specialist, with a focus on accessibility and inclusivity. Your salary will triple. You'll have your own office, and you'll be training our entire staff on proper protocols. I felt the tears spill over, my hands trembling as I tried to process his words. What about Patricia and the complaints? I asked, my voice barely audible. Miss Williams is being demoted to administrative assistant, he said, his expression darkening. The employees who filed discriminatory complaints are facing disciplinary action, and Mr. Blake is being required to take sensitivity training. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The people who had tried to tear me down were finally being held accountable. As for you, he continued, you'll start Monday in your new position. The people who mocked you for being compassionate will now be reporting to you. I left his office that day with a mix of emotions, relief, pride, and a sense of justice I hadn't thought possible. Within a week, my life had completely changed. I had my own office with a window view and a title that actually meant something, Director of Client Accessibility and Inclusion. The Pacific Northwest Deaf Rights Foundation partnership became official, and I became their primary contact at the firm. Mr. Chin and I worked together to create protocols that made our office truly welcoming to deaf and hard-of-hearing clients. Patricia's demotion was immediate and public. She now handled filing and data entry under my supervision. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Janet and Steve were required to attend weekly sensitivity training sessions that I designed and led. Watching them sit through my lessons was a quiet victory I savored. Even Mr. Blake had to publicly apologize to the entire staff for his discriminatory comments. Seeing him stumble through that apology was one of the most satisfying moments of my professional life. But the best part was seeing how the office culture changed. We installed visual alert systems, hired certified interpreters for important meetings, and I trained every employee on basic sign language and disability etiquette. 6 months later, 3 other major organizations chose our firm specifically because of our accessibility reputation. I learned something powerful through all of this. Doing the right thing isn't always easy, and it's rarely popular. But it's always worth it. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. Sometimes, the people watching aren't the ones trying to tear you down. They're the ones lifting you up. What would you have done in my situation? Let me know below. Your story could inspire someone else to keep fighting for what's right.